Hi, everybody. So great to be with you in New York. Welcome to all the Oprah Daily Insiders. Thank you for watching. And so, listen, this is a conversation I'm so excited to have because I know you all have been seeing the headlines and it's blowing up your social media feeds. The new weight loss drugs, everybody's talking about Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro. Will they change the game on the health battle? Hundreds of millions are fighting every day. More than 2 billion adults, 2 billion adults, that's 1/4 of the world's population, are overweight or obese. And it's estimated that by 2035, that number is going to reach more than half the world. Today, in most countries, y'all, obesity, I didn't know this until preparing for this show, obesity kills more people than malnutrition. That was a wow for me, too. So you all know I've been on this journey for most of my life. My highest weight was 237 pounds. I don't know if there is another public person whose weight struggle has been exploited as much as mine over the years. So I am ready for this conversation. With me, our top experts, and this audience has some interesting questions and opinions. And I know many of you watching have on your mind as well. So questions like, is being overweight a lack of willpower, or is obesity a medically treatable disease? Are these new drugs a miracle cure, a silver bullet for weight loss? Can anybody take them? Are they safe? That's what we all want to know. So I want to introduce our panel. Dr. Fatima Cody, Stanford. She goes by Dr. Fatima, is an associate professor of medicine and pediatrics at Harvard Medical School and an obesity medicine physician scientist at the Massachusetts General Hospital Weight Center. Dr. Rachel Goldman, who goes by Dr. Rachel, is a licensed psychologist in private practice and clinical assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine. Dr. Melanie J. is a primary care doctor board certified in obesity medicine and the director of the NYU Langone Comprehensive Program on Obesity. She also works with veterans at the New York Harbor Veterans Affairs. And Seema Sistani is the Chief Executive Officer of Weight Watchers. I've been an investor and on the board of Weight Watchers since 2015. I invited Seema today because I know many people want to know where Weight Watchers stands on this issue. We're going to get to that. So happy to have you all here.
So happy to be here.
Okay, let's start with this. 10 years ago, the American Medical Association declared obesity a chronic disease. Now, a lot of us missed that, but many people can't wrap their brain around what that really means. So, Dr. Fatima, I read that you played a central role in that designation a decade ago. Can you define for us what it means that obesity is a disease?
Absolutely. Why do we call obesity a disease? We call it disease because there is malfunction in how the body is operating. And there's two primary pathways of the brain that actually regulate weight. One pathway is our anorexigenic pathway. When we hear anorexigenic, what do we hear? We have less food intake and less food storage. Now, we have a different pathway of the brain, and when patients have overweight and obesity, they're typically upregulating the orexigenic pathway of the brain. Orexigenic is the opposite of anorexigenic. That pathway supports storage of adipose. Adipose is a fancy word for fat. Now, I just threw out a lot of vocabulary there.
Yeah.
But that tells us that there is dysfunction in how the body is regulating weight. And it's going on in our brains, and it's influenced by the world around us. Our genetics, development, environment, behavior all play a role in our body's dysfunction or dysregulation of our adipose, that organ that is fat.
So what I'm hearing is that it's a brain thing.
Yes.
And this is a question. I remember many years ago on the Oprah show, I don't know, decades ago now, when I was first having this conversation trying to explain to the public why alcoholism was a disease. And many people did not believe that alcoholism was a disease. They just thought people overdrink and that why don't you just put the bottle down? So how is this somehow relatable to that? Because every person that overdrinks is not an alcoholic. Every person that overeats is not necessarily have obesity as a disease.
Absolutely.
Can you explain that? Why for some they're just overeaters and some it's a disease because of the brain thing, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's about how much we take in and how much we store. So we all have those friends. My husband is here in the audience. He's this friend of mine who can eat whatever he wants and he doesn't really store that. And you're like, how is that even possible? And then we have those people that look at pizza and they're like, my gosh, I just looked at it and I feel like I stored it.
Yeah. Where are you, husband?
Husband is in the back corner over there.
Yeah, husband has a name. Thank you. Corey. Thank you. Corey can eat apple pie at 11 o'clock at night.
And he's able to do this. His body defends a very lean set point. He's able to eat what he wants and his body just defends that lean set point. If I were to do the exact same behaviors, I would store more excess adipose. My body is more predisposed to storing more fat.
Damn sure mine is.
Yeah.
Is that the word I've been looking for? Adipose.
Yes.
I'm an adipose storer. Okay, all right. So that is a scientific fact.
That's a scientific
that some people's bodies operate differently than others. We can accept that, right?
Yes.
We can see that.
Absolutely.
And for those of us who are adipose storers, no matter how many times, because you all have watched me diet, it's a recurring thing because my body always seems to want to go back to a certain weight.
Absolutely, and that's that idea of weight set point, okay?
So that is real.
That is completely real. The brain knows where it wants to be, and it's going to do whatever it can to bring you back to that.
So that's why you always go back.
And it's nothing you did wrong. It's just the brain is super powerful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So, Dr. J, you say one way to think about obesity is similar to cancer, that it has different causes and it's different for every person.
Absolutely. Thank you, Oprah, and thank you for hosting such an amazing conversation about such an important topic.
It's good.
You know, of course, obesity is different than cancer in many ways. And what we talk about a lot in terms of what influences whether or not someone develops obesity with not just their genes, but we talk about social determinants of health. So that's what kinds of foods are you exposed to in your environments? What kind of opportunities do you have for exercise? What kind of stress, trauma are you under? A lot of my patients, develop obesity after they, suffer from personal trauma. As doctors, we give patients medications that cause weight gain, and for some people, that leads to increased risk of obesity. So there are a lot of analogies between cancer and other chronic diseases and obesity, but there's not just one cause. It's not just that people are eating too much and not exercising enough.
Okay, the most I've gotten so far, I'm tracking, I think. Are we tracking? Is that there's something in some people's brains that works differently than other people's brains. Your husband's brain is different than yours.
Yes.
And we've seen those people who can eat anything they want and seemingly not gain weight. And then we're the adipose holders here.
Adipose.
Adipose.
Yes.
How do you spell it?
ADIPOSE.
Okay, so we the adipose holders know that if we looked at that apple, if I ate an apple pie at 11 o'clock at night, I would be 2 pounds heavier in the morning. I can't eat after a certain time. Yes. So when it comes to the national conversation around obesity, what are we getting wrong? I know you were a consultant for that movie, The Whale, which I thought was so profound.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Rachel.
And once again, this conversation is such an important one. And actually, in answering that question, I want to add what we're getting right? Like we're having this conversation, and this is huge. And The Whale, similarly, it's a step in the right direction. And what we need to continue doing is having these conversations about the fact that obesity is a disease. Because one of the things that we're getting wrong is this idea that it is calories in, calories out. And like Dr. Fatima just said, it's not that for everyone. It's that for some people, but it's not for others. And people that really struggle with their weight, with their health, and with obesity, it's not that. It's not about moving more and eating less. And that is what we have to change. We have to change that conversation as we're doing here. We have to educate more people and raise more awareness about this.
I know that we're going to get pushback from a lot of people saying, oh, now it's a disease, Oprah. Now you're saying it's a disease. How do we make this conversation accessible for people to understand that it really is and that it's not now just a cop-out?
Yeah. So I think it starts with shifting the language that we use, right? So one of the things is, using people first language, for instance. It's a person with obesity, same as we would say with cancer, right? It's a person with cancer. And this is going to start familiarizing people with
So it's a person with obesity.
Exactly. Yeah. Or a person struggles with obesity. So really putting the person first, we don't want to define an individual by their medical condition, right? We don't want to just label somebody because of their medical condition. But the problem with that is it's difficult with obesity. I'm admitting it. I'm an expert in this field, but it's difficult because obesity is one of the diseases, maybe the only one, that we look at somebody and we might know. We don't know if they have obesity, but obesity has to do with, our health. But by looking at somebody, we see their physical appearance, right? So this, and not that everybody in a larger body has obesity, so that's complicated to also wrap our heads around. But it's difficult because of that, right? But it's hard. I mean, I even have to remind myself sometimes to use that language and to kind of shift that. But I think that's a really good place to start, is to change the way that we're thinking about this.
Well, how do you know when when it actually is a disease for you versus it's not your willpower? Because I'm going to get to you, Seema, because one of the things that Weight Watchers has been saying all these years is that, you just take the blue points and the green points and the red point, and that, and as we know, as a member of the board, the blue points and the green points and all those points, if you are not meticulous with the points, you end up putting the weight back on. So now, where is Weight Watchers in this conversation?
Well, I'll start by saying, I joined as CEO last year, but my history with Weight Watchers began in 2013 as a member. I gained 60 pounds after having my first child. And even though I know how to live healthy habits, my mom, who's here, has her PhD in food science. She's a registered dietitian. So I know how to live healthy habits, and I struggled. And Weight Watchers helped me because I'm not an adipose carrier, right? And so we introduced this category almost 60 years ago, but unknowingly we introduced the shame also for people who diet and exercise alone was not enough. And Dr. Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. We know better now. So we need to be the first to approach this with authenticity and say, weight is a spectrum. And Weight Watchers, as the number one doctor recommended program, it worked for some, like me, but not all. And for those people, we don't want them to internalize that as a moral failing. Obesity is not a moral failing. It's a chronic relapsing condition.
So now Weight Watchers purchased a company that helps people figure out what works for them.
That's right. Because it's a spectrum. And so what people need help with is understanding if they're one of those people living in a larger body who has been struggling with the genetic, biological, environmental underpinnings of obesity. And so we're now able to do that. We're able to provide a broader solution set. And that's important to address this stigma because, as you mentioned with alcoholism, heart health is a great example. Right? If you are suffering from high cholesterol or hypertension, you still have to have lifestyle intervention, right? You should quit smoking, you should eat better, you should move more. But for some, you need a statin medication, right? You need an ACE inhibitor. That doesn't mean you don't also do lifestyle intervention, but it's an and. And so we want to be clear about that and be the first to say where we got it wrong and where we can do better so that the people who need access to need to go out and ask for help, especially when they've been stigmatized even by doctors in cases, blamed and shamed, that they can look to solutions, and we want to be part of that solution.
And also the question that's in the forefront of my mind is, how do you know if it is a disease for you or if you're just an overeater?
Yeah, so like Seema was talking about, that for some people, they really struggle, right? And I think the first place to begin is that if you are somebody that has tried on your own making those lifestyle changes and are really struggling to lose that additional weight, to get in the healthy, just to feel healthy, then that could be a sign that it's time to seek additional help, right? And what I mean by that is go for a consult, see your medical provider, see a healthcare professional, and ask, be curious. I heard about this, I've tried this, it's not working, I'm still struggling. What do you think? And I think that's the first step that, but it's, as Seema said, it's important that you make those changes too, right? To be healthy overall, we want to think about health, physical and emotional health. We need to be moving our bodies more. We need to be consuming nutritious food anyways. So I think, if you're already doing that and you're struggling, you don't see the number change, although it's not all about the number, we know, but you don't see that and you don't feel good in your clothes.
Or if you've tried and failed and
Right,
tried
or that
and failed.
yo-yoing, right?
I've yo-yoed my whole life.
Exactly. Then that can be a sign that maybe you are somebody that has obesity, which is a metabolic disease. There's other diseases involved as well and puts you at higher risk of other conditions. Then I would say, it's time to see a medical professional.
Okay. So you have obesity, you're not obese.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
You have
Absolutely.
obesity.
Yes.
Okay. So I know you all have a lot of questions. The audience has a lot of questions. But before we get to that, Doctor, can you give us an overview of these medications?
Absolutely.
And how they work?
So there are a lot of medications. The ones that have been getting a lot of attention as of late are what we call GLP-1 receptor agonists. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonists, okay? So how do those meds work?
How exciting.
How exciting, right? Let's talk about, I had to introduce to you guys this concept of how the brain regulates weight for you to understand how those medications work. The primary way in which they work is they upregulate that anorexigenic pathway. So a lot of people on these meds say, I feel different, something feels different, I don't understand what it is. It's because
It hit that pathway in the brain.
I hit that pathway in the brain. And guess what? I downregulated the orexigenic pathway of the brain. So the primary reason why I think these medications are getting this level of attention is that they go right to the source of the problem in the brain.
They're hitting the brain.
They're hitting the brain.
Okay. So it makes you less hungry, but it has nothing to do with your stomach.
So no, that's not true. So the GLP-1 receptor agonists, I didn't go through all the pathways,
Okay.
but the GLP-1 the other...
You feel less full, and that's coming from your brain.
It's coming from your brain. But the GLP-1s, those injectables we've been hearing a lot about, they also slow movement through the GI tract.
So let's just call them by name. So the GLP-1s are Ozempic and Wegovy.
Mounjaro. Those are some of the key.
Mounjaro is a GLP-1 too?
It's actually a dual agonist, so it has two components in it.
Okay.
I just call it hungry brain and hungry gut, and they're talking to each other. Yeah. And these medications help slow that conversation down with the brain and get you to a place, if you're somebody who was living with obesity, where you can actually adhere to lifestyle changes that come a little more naturally to others.
But I'm gonna push
Exactly.
back a little bit because there are non-responders to these medications.
Yeah.
There are people that go on the meds and they're like, wait a minute, I lost 4 pounds. Why did this person over here lose 50 pounds? Because that must not be the dysfunction in your body. And it's okay, right? So when we see people as a failure, even when they go on the medications, because it didn't work, it's not their fault.
Does it mean they're not adipose holders?
It just means that that's not the pathway that's dysfunctional in their body. And we're still learning different pathways and how they interact and interplay with this complex multifactorial disease.
So the drugs may not work for everybody.
Exactly.
And that's where we can also continue to shift that conversation and use different language, because it's not that you failed the drug. It's the drug failed you. Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have to keep in mind with all of these treatments.
Okay, can you all tell us, is it better to have just the GLP-1, or is it better to have the GLP-1 combined with whatever the other thing is in Mounjaro? Which is better?
We haven't really done yet the head-to-head,
Yeah, we haven't.
right? It looks like from the studies that you get a little bit more weight loss with the Mounjaro because you have that combination. And there'll be other combinations coming out, by the way. So if you're getting confused with all the alphabet soup that Dr. Fatima is saying, just wait. But
There's something called triple G.
A triple G.
A triple G that's coming out. It's called recalcitride or something?
Retatrutide.
Retatrutide.
Yeah.
Baby.
And so that,
Just call
It's
it.
that's
in
another
phase
G.
2
It's another
trials.
G.
I'm waiting on the triple G.
So that has the G, that's the, it has the GLP-1, right? You guys got that?
Yep, and
We
it's
have
got the other thing, and it's got another thing.
And it has a glucagon receptor in it also. So the triple G, GLP-1, GIP, glucose insulinotropic polypeptide, and glucagon. The 48-week studies showed 24.2% total body weight loss.
That's exactly
in
what I read.
48 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.